You are listening to Trans Resistor Radio. I'm your host, Franz. My website is theageoftransitions.com. Go to theageoftransitions.com. You can get past episodes of the podcast, Trans Resistor Radio episodes that you can download the audio files. You can save them, archive them, share them, make your own files out of them. You also find other videos and articles on theageoftransitions.com. Today on Trans Resistor Radio, we have a very special podcast for many reasons. One being that I'm doing the first video interview ever. So if you're listening to the audio file of this podcast, check out the video version of it too. It'll be posted on theageoftransitions.com and my YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see me and my guest. And my guest being a very exciting person. His website is thebigbadbank.com. He has served as a naval officer on cruisers and destroyers. He's held corporate positions for 8 years and worked as an entrepreneur in the health industry. He taught small business management and accounting as an adjunct professor at a college level for 5 years and started a health corporation in 1991, which became very profitable. He then sold it and has been retired for 3 years as of 2009. He's also a dedicated conservationist and in turn lost a career business because he stood up for nature. And now he's here to inform everyone of the concept of the Big Bad Bank. Today's guest on the show is George Washington Hunt. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron. Good to be with you. And you're probably wondering, how did I get this far? Being just a common person in Longmont, Colorado. Well, I happened to penetrate a Rothschild meeting by accident, but God took me there. And I saw Rothschild and Rockefeller there at the meeting, and the Secretary of the Treasury, and it was labeled as an environment meeting, but all the world bankers of the world were there. And I penetrated the meeting and found out secrets, which we are experiencing now.
Yes, yeah, that's great. I'm glad you just dove right in there because this is exactly what I want to talk about. The meeting itself. What exactly was this meeting, and how did you get to go to it?
The meeting was touted as an environment meeting. It was advertised on television. There were pictures of reindeer and all that kind of stuff saying, "Oh, we love the environment." So my son had been killed in the environment in a ski accident a year earlier, and my other son, my youngest one, wanted to go to the Arctic to build huts for the rangers and so on. So I said to myself, well, maybe I ought to go to that wilderness meeting. Maybe I'd get my son a job with the Smokies. And the Smokies were there. The chief ranger of the United States was there. And but when I heard about the financial deal that Rothschild really called the meeting for, then that's when my brain began to work. How can I get into that secret meeting? As luck would have it, or fortune, or God would have it, whichever you want to call it, I learned that one of the official hosts was sick, and I got his phone number. I called him up, and I said, "Can I take your place?" He said, "I'd really like that." So I was appointed an official host at the meeting because they accepted me as an official host. So I penetrated the meeting, could ask questions from anybody. I had lunch with the Rothschilds. It was amazing.
Yeah. Now, what about this Rothschild connection? How did you learn that the meeting was? Did you say that the meeting was actually convened at the impetus of Rothschild themselves?
Yes. I got a recording of the meeting that I went to, and it says that Edmond de Rothschild chartered the meeting that I'd gone to using a United Nations committee as his interface to get in to world environment, world money, World Bank, world currency, everything focused on Rothschild through this meeting.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, because you hear about so many of these UN environmental meetings and environmental actions, but you don't hear about the connection to these banking families. And why do you think that? Why is this not common knowledge? Why is it not common knowledge that what you're just saying about the Rothschilds convening the meeting? Why is that not known?
It was unknown because it would attract too much influence. So Rothschild was never mentioned in the papers. He was only mentioned in a little squib of a meeting that they were going to have up in Estes Park, Colorado. That was a secret meeting, but it cost like $500 or $600 to go to that. So that weeded out all the public. They're saying, I go to a meeting, listen to this crap about environment. These guys don't really believe it. So Rothschild disguised himself. And, just an example of the power these people have. I was sitting in a conference listening to James Baker, the Secretary of the Treasury, and suddenly, as he was talking, I felt a power come into the room. I looked around me, and there was David Rockefeller walking right by me, and there were 8 bodyguards in the back watching Rockefeller walking down. And then he went up to this gray-headed chap with a mustache, and it was Edmond de Rothschild. I saw Rothschild and Rockefeller shaking hands at this meeting. Now, about a month ago, you probably read in the papers that Rothschild and Rockefeller had combined their estates.
Yeah.
And Rothschild said, good, we finally got a leg into the United States. See, Rothschild doesn't look at the United States as a sovereign nation. He looks at it as a nation waiting to be conquered, stripped of our wealth, and merged into the Commonwealth of England.
Yes, and this gets into the subject of the Milner Group, which I do want to talk about in some detail here too, because, could you just speak to the connection between the Milner Group just briefly now, maybe?
Yes. In 1877, Cecil Rhodes died, and he left all he had to the British Round Table. They're the British Patriots in that group of letters that I sent you. Yeah. And that endowed the British Round Table, and then the British Round Table created the Council for Foreign Relations out of that in the United States as an appendage of the
Royal Institute of International Affairs and all that?
Yes, RIAA.
Yeah.
You got, okay. So they got going then on undermining the United States through the Rhodes Will. They could pay these people to bring false politics, false finance, all that sort of things. And that's what they did. And we've been undermined.
Yeah, this is so interesting. Again, it seems like something that flies under the radar. It is something that flies under the radar, this whole area, because we're starting talking about the UNCED meeting, and then we get on to this whole Milner Group, the Rothschilds, and people just don't know about it. But the thing is, you've attended quite a few of these meetings, and friends of yours have attended meetings. And one in particular I really want to talk about on this show is the Iowa meeting, where you said that Maurice Strong presided, I guess.
Yes, Maurice Strong was Secretary General of that meeting.
He was. Okay, yeah.
It was the one that created Agenda 21, too.
Yeah. And from this meeting, a document came out that you sent me. So I have this document. I'm going to put it up on the website so that listeners can read this, because we're going to talk about this document in detail. But again, it's this conference itself, so we know, it was kind of it was a continuation of the UNCED meeting which you attended earlier. Is that what it was?
Yes, that's right. The first UNCED, which stands for United Nations Committee for Environment and Development, Gro Harlem Brundtland is the one that heads up that committee. She's a UN official, president of World Health Organization in 1996, prime minister in Norway back in the 80s. She created the United Nations Committee for Environment and Development for Rothschild. That was the meeting that Rothschild and Rockefeller were going to enter into controlling world water, world pollution, world food. They're all, the Rothschild-Rockefeller combine is into all of these things through this meeting that I attended.
Yeah.
Okay, and they can read about it in my site, thebigbadbank.com.
Yes.
I have a 50-page documentary there. They can catch up on it if they want to.
And, okay, so that was the meeting that you went to, and then there was the Iowa meeting on September 22nd, 1991. So, again, this was the one that Maurice Strong was presiding at. How did you get to this meeting? Or I know that wasn't you. Who was at this meeting? How did you know them, and how did all that come about?
A doctor's wife in Des Moines had written to me, complimented me on a early 1988 video that I had made, and we established a relationship. And so when I heard about the meeting, I informed her the meeting was coming up, and could she go and pick up any kind of information that she could. And that little rascal, she created a scene when they wouldn't let her into the private meeting, and she said, I have a right as an American citizen. So he said, okay, come in. While she was in there, she purloined, shall we say, the document that you have in your hands. It was distributed at the meeting, and it tells a lot about what they're going to do about population control and things like that. So go ahead. That's how.
Yeah, the actual document you're talking about here is titled Initiative for Eco 92 Earth Charter. There's a lot of interesting points with this specifically, because I know that the Earth Charter itself came out in 1997. So this is Earth Charter before it was Earth Charter. But anyway, the document itself is just amazing. It has Congressman Gephardt's phone number on it, and he's labeled as Secretariat for World Order on it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this document was obtained by your friend,
by this doctor's wife.
Yep, by the doctor's wife.
She
obtained this document at the Iowa meeting, which was a secret meeting. She wasn't supposed to get in, but she got in because she kicked and screamed her way in there, and she got this.
Yes.
And I just want to know, and there's so many quotes in this, because as you're saying, it's talking about depopulation completely bluntly. And the strange thing about that is you'll read the Club of Rome documents, which talks about all the same stuff, but they do it in a sort of like, they're not as blunt as this document is. This just plainly states, let's see here, let me read from it. It says, the need for firm control, the present vast overpopulation, now far beyond the world carrying capacity, cannot be answered by future reductions in the birth rate due to contraception, sterilization, abortion, but must be met in the present by the reduction in the numbers presently existing. This must be done by whatever means necessary. They would never write that in a Club of Rome official report that everybody can read, you know what I mean? So what do you make of this? Why did they pass this out at this meeting? Are they serious with this document? What is it?
The document is a statement to the people that attended this secret meeting of what they had to do when they got population reduction requests from the United Nations, which includes, they didn't mention it, it includes killing people purposely, wars, poisons in the vaccinations. Gro Harlem Brundtland Brundtland.
Brundtland, yeah, Brundtland. Yeah.
Brundtland was also the head of the World Health Organization. Now, I had a corporation that had to correspond with the World Health Organization, and I learned that there was HIV put into the smallpox vaccinations they were giving to the Africans in Africa. They have a huge AIDS problem now down in Africa. They're dying like flies. And it's because of the World Health Organization poisoning the vaccinations.
Now, how did you come across that information? How did you find that out?
Well, I was the founder and CEO of Medical Environment, whose job was to educate the United States clinics and so on how to avoid infection from bloodborne pathogens. So I went into the HIV thing, and 3 immunologists, I don't remember their names now, but probably someone could call it up, HIV fraud or something like that. Well, in any case, I got enough information that indicated that the Fort Detrick, Maryland, was the one that created the HIV infection.
Do you have documents existing on this information as well?
Yeah, the other documentation comes from the immunologists with whom I corresponded.
Okay.
I say, I read your papers. This is very interesting. How do they introduce that kind of stuff? So I guess you could put this on a list of George is not positive. Okay?
Sure. Yeah, I gotcha.
But they were found out, though, when the anthrax was sent to various people about 12 years ago, 10 years ago. They identified it as the Iowa strain of anthrax. They were able to key it in. And I learned that the only one that had the Iowa strain of anthrax was Fort Detrick, Maryland, the same place that I'm accusing of creating the HIV infection.
Okay.
Their UN is sinister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
You can take that and run with it, and find out that I'm probably correct.
Yeah, that's the thing about all this. It just seems so outlandish, and it seems so out there. But as you say, you've got documentation. This document specifically, the Eco 92 thing from Iowa, again, it seems outlandish. I'm looking at it, wondering why anybody would even write it, actually. Because they state it pretty bluntly that we need to make they have to go through with population reduction. As you say, you're getting into how they actually have done it.
Yeah. In those last 5 statements in those papers you have.
Yeah.
From the Security Council of the United Nations says, you will do these things. Read them to the people.
Yeah, okay. So A is the Security Council of the UN, led by the Anglo-Saxon major nation powers. Again, a little side there. I'm surprised that they would put that in there. But anyway, the Security Council will decree that henceforth the Security Council will inform all nations that its sufferance on population has ended, that all nations have quotas for reduction on a yearly basis, which will be enforced by the Security Council by selective or total embargo of credit, items of trade including food and medicine, or by military force when required. It's amazing that they would write that.
They could go into our country with military force, is what it says.
And what you're saying is that this document, they're not joking with this document. They really mean to do this.
Oh, yes. Club of Rome. What's the name? The Elders. ELDERS. The Elders are one of the... Jimmy Carter is a part of it.
Oh, yeah, he's a member, yep.
Yep. And Tutu. And
Desmond Tutu, Al Gore, Bill Gates,
Yes.
Many other big names.
Bill Gates is pro an elimination of population. Mm-hmm. He takes it from the abortion side, but you know that Microsoft is containing population now, if they've been ordered to. That was a wild statement. Microsoft isn't definitely involved in this. However, Bill Gates has a reputation for population control.
Yeah, he's made some interesting comments, to say the least. And again, in this document, to tie it back, I find it surprising that they would mention the whole Anglo-Saxon system, Anglo-Saxon powers being the controllers of the UN, which they just did in that previous portion that I read from this. But in addition to that, they talk about the Milner Group, and they say how they're that they call themselves the living sponsors of the Cecil Rhodes Will. So I'll read that part out from, again, the ECO 92 document from the Iowa meeting that you procured. Okay, so I'll just read quite a bit. This is the time to save the Anglo-Saxon race and its most glorious production, the Anglo-Saxon system of banking, insurance, and trade. We are the living sponsors of the great Cecil Rhodes Will of 1877, in which Rhodes devoted his fortune to the extension of British rule throughout the world. And then it goes on from there. Who is this we that they're saying? Who are these living sponsors of the Cecil Rhodes Will that are being referenced in this document?
They're called the British Race Patriots, and they're organized in England under the name of Cobden Clubs. They're the origin of that document in your hands, as you see up at on the first page. It came from Cobden Clubs.
Yep.
They are interested in England taking over the world. Now, England is the biggest empire that has ever been, right now. Genghis Khan, all those guys, Alexander, they all dropped to second and third and fourth place. England and the Queen have taken over the world. And as you noticed in the document, they also are going to take over what are the Tigris, Euphrates Valley?
Yeah. You want me to read that?
Yeah, okay. United States too.
It says the entire continent of Africa, the Holy Land, the Valley of the Euphrates, the islands of Cyprus and Candia, the whole of South America, the islands of the Pacific not heretofore possessed by Great Britain, the whole of the Malay Archipelago, the seaboard of China and Japan, the ultimate recovery of the United States of America as an integral part of the British Empire. So that's the area that they're concerned with, apparently. That's
the mind of the Queen. That's the mind of England. They hail Britannia. We will rule the waves. You know, they're at it.
Now,
Rothschild.
It's amazing. When we talk about the Milner Group and we talk about the secret society of Cecil Rhodes, of course, Carroll Quigley wrote a book, The Anglo-American Establishment, all about this subject. And Cecil Rhodes' secret society was a legitimate secret society dedicated to British rule, like we're just talking about. Their high ideal was to create a world empire that would be, at the very least, based on the British Empire, if not completely ruled from the British Empire, this world empire. That was their idea.
Yes.
And what we're dealing with now is a document that comes out from a secret meeting. And so if you're talking about the concept of a secret society like that of Cecil Rhodes, would you say that this is the same secret society at work? Is it indeed a secret society, or is it something else that was at work at this Iowa meeting? Is this document part of their secret notes that they're only supposed to see, but somehow we were able to? What do you make of all that?
Well, you rose a good point. Maybe it was deliberately planted there to make us fearful, to make us give up, to make us cooperate. On the other hand, maybe it was a semi-secret document. I'd say semi-secret, not secret. That was intended just for the people at that meeting who had been invited. But this little gal from Des Moines, Iowa, she went in and got one of the documents.
Yeah. And I'd like to, when we're talking about secret societies, I kind of want to tie this to Maurice Strong, because I know Maurice Strong was there at the meeting. And just quickly, what was Maurice Strong's role at the meeting?
All right. Maurice Strong is a Druid. In other words, he is a person of the earth. He was brought up in Canada, and David Rockefeller was introduced to him by a chap named Wild Bill Harrison when Maurice Strong was 18 years old. And David Rockefeller immediately took him under his arm and established him in the United Nations. And Maurice Strong's job has been, from the beginning, to create the United Nations into the world power. Overlapping sovereignty and everything. And so that's been his job. Well, I caught him in a water scheme. It's at my site, thebigbadbank.com, how I did this. And drove him out of the United States because it was divulged of this information I got. And he has since been sent to Beijing, China, where he is operating to make China the number one economy in the world. Yeah, this guy Maurice Strong is a heavyweight.
Yes.
And he is the one that has led all of the United Nations Committee for Environment and Development meetings all the way through from 1992 was the first meeting. And the first World Wilderness Congress was held there. Then there was a second and the third, and I went to the fourth World Wilderness Congress. Aptly named, because the first world is the U.S., England, Europe. Second world are the Soviet bloc countries that have come out of their Stalinesque era. The third world are those countries that have abounded since World War II. And the fourth world, wilderness, is what we're facing now. We're facing a fourth world wilderness, which the people in Auroville, India, that are part of another UN thing, call the era of the lostness of the mind.
But wait. The area of the lostness of the mind? Is that? I'm sorry.
The era of the lostness of the mind is called the fourth world wilderness. See, it was a grammar or whatever you want to call it. The Fourth World Wilderness Congress, they say, was the fourth one, but it's really aptly named as the Fourth World Wilderness Conference that's going to lead us into control of water, food, environment, everything by the United Nations. That's going to be the Fourth World Wilderness. We lose our personalities to a communistic, feudalistic types of society. And that's what we have ahead of us, not only in the United States, but all over the world. World poverty, world warfare. So, welcome to the fourth world. That's what we're experiencing now.
Yeah, that lostness of the mind thing is interesting because just if you're talking about just collective psyche, everybody is lost now. Nobody seems to know what to believe in, do you think they're referring to that, just sort of this strange malaise that's taking over now?
Yes, it's chaos that doesn't have any intelligent rhyme or reason to it. At least that was spoken at the meeting. He said, of course, one of the fellows that was an international banker got up to speak at the meeting, and he said, there is no arithmetic idea that can come out of what's happening. It will just be chaos and confusion. Now, people who read the Bible will find out that Babylon means confusion. So we're entering into a second Babylon, so to speak.
Very interesting. Now, there's a very interesting article. I think it's entitled "The Wizard of Baca Grande." It's all the way back from 1990. A man named Daniel Woods wrote it. What it was Woods interviewed Maurice Strong. I guess he hung around with him for a few days, did an interview. And in this interview, Maurice Strong gets to talking about this novel that he would write if he had the time to do it or if he could do it. And in this novel, basically the idea is it's the world economic leaders of the World Economic Forum that gather in Switzerland. They come up with this plan to take the world hostage because they have the power, this economic power to change everything. Let's see here. And this is a quote from the article, Woods quoting Strong. So Strong said, this group of world leaders form a secret society to bring about an economic collapse. These aren't terrorists, they're world leaders. They have positioned themselves in the world's commodities and stock markets. They've engineered using their access to stock markets and computers and gold supplies a panic. Then they prevent the world stock markets from closing. They jam the gears. They hire mercenaries who hold the rest of the world leaders at Davos as hostage. The markets can't close. And Maurice Strong goes on to say, I probably shouldn't be saying things like this. So he's talking in fictional terms, but is this secret society of world leaders, is this a real thing? Is he alluding to a real group, or is this pure fiction?
No, he's alluding to a real group. It's but the group is broken into the Knights of Malta, the Knights of this, that, and so on. They have these little secret societies that are a confederacy. And so Maurice Strong gives orders to the UN, and he also gives orders to this inner group on how to jam the gears. And they're jamming the gears. Gold goes up, gold goes down. Sterling is fixed in London. They're accusing the international bankers right now of toying with the price of gold. You know, they're doing these things now to strip the middle class of wealth. Hey, I'm included. And break down the middle class and just have two classes, the inner party and the outer citizens.
And they're planning on using environmentalism to carry this out, correct? How is that? How would that work?
Okay, it's called creative destruction. It's an economic term coined by an economist named Schumpeter. And that is the best way out of a depression and to keep people busy is to create war or build lots of dams for the United Nations and have the Rothschilds finance those dams and then make the people of the countries responsible for the loans on those dams. And then when they see the dams aren't working, they'll have to undo the dams. And all of that is part of this creative destruction path that they are working on right now. World War III and United Nations ridiculous projects that the people don't vote on. The United Nations determines that it would be best for us. You get that? I don't know if I answered your question.
No. Yeah, So much of what seems to make no sense actually does have sense to it. That's a theme that I like to hit all the time, is that so much of this destruction and chaos is actually a tool of sorts to bring about rapid change, because we're going through a time of rapid change right now.
You got it. And the rapid change is a la Egypt, a la Tunisia. There will be riots and there will be Syrian types of oppression in our country. They'll resort and are resorting to all sorts of things to strip us of wealth and to make us fearful and to educate us about the world order.
Yeah, so this is something that they want us to be aware of. They want us to understand this idea of sort of this world system, and so that we'll slowly go into it and accept it, correct?
Yes, it's kind of like the frog in the water, and they heat the water little by little. Have you heard that analogy?
Oh, yeah, the boiling frog, yep.
The boiling frog, that's what we're going through. The boiling frog.
Now, what is Maurice Strong's connection specifically to Rothschild? Is he connected to them in any sort of way?
Oh, yes. He's the one that that drove Rothschild and Lady Rothschild to the meeting that I saw. So they were in the same car together.
All right. So,
I know that.
So they're definitely friends.
I also know that Maurice Strong is David Rockefeller's key man in the UN. And by association, of course, the world order, Rothschild, Rockefeller, they're all in it together.
Yeah.
So Rothschild, Rockefeller, the Queen of England, all of the European queens and viscounts and that have this old money, the Duchess of Alba in Spain. You have the group in Netherlands, Queen Juliana and those guys that own oil. Shell Oil is owned by them.
Yeah.
You know, they're all in together.
Now, what about this bank that they want to make? I know that you talked about the bank in your 1992 video about the UNCED meeting. Has that gained any ground? Has that actually come to fruition in any sort of way, the bank you were talking about back then to now?
Yes. The banks are operating as a confederacy right now. Banco Santerra talks to Banco Interesa, talks to Banco Ambrosiano. The bankers are in a confederacy together, and they take the orders from the Rothschilds as to what they're going to do next. Like, Mr. Bank, you're going to go broke in 2 months. You're part of our scheme. So take all your good assets and pour them into this and so bank, so that when you go down with all the bad paper.
Sure.
You know, that kind of stuff that bankers do.
What about the World Conservation Bank that you speak of? Is that in existence in any way today? Is that happening? That one where they use natural resources as collateral or real wealth somehow? Is that
Yes. Yeah. I just got the first word about the International World Conservation Bank was made on a site called Wild Incorporated. It's run by one of the top 5 at the conference that I went to. I asked him to lunch about a couple months ago. He says, "You got to be crazy." He said, "After the things you said about Rothschild, the most noble person on earth," he said.
Oh,
okay.
He literally said the most noble person on earth?
Yeah, he said, "You have offended," I could get his Gmail, he sent to me. He said, "You have offended the most important person on earth," or words to that effect.
That's interesting because if we talk about the Milner Group again and this group to bring about this World Federation, they literally believe that they're doing a public service in everything that they do. They're true idealists. Like, their ideals for this British Commonwealth the world over, they think that they're helping the entire world out in doing this whole thing. They really think that, do they not?
Yes, they believe in what they're doing, and that the means of getting there justifies the ends. Yeah. So they'll do anything to accomplish a new world order.
Yeah, and it's their system of banking specifically, and is that the real crux of this whole world order they want to create?
Yeah, money drives the world. And all the money in the world and the wealth will be encased eventually into one world bank that has the power to create its own currency. It will have its own central bank. It will allot exchange rates and what they will be. They'll fix exchange rates, all sorts of things where they can control every society on the earth.
What I find interesting, too, is the actual nature of money seems like it could change, especially if you're talking about using natural resources as, like, wealth in a bank and things like this. Is money shifting now from what we know it into some sort of weird thing where and will it be used to get us just to behave in a certain way? Will money be kind of turned into just credits?
Yes. The Queen of England has said there won't be any cash after 2017. There you go.
Yeah.
That might give you an idea of where we're headed. Everything will be debits and credits. And referring to the scriptures, it says eventually, because of fraud and so on, people will be required to have a chip in their hand or their forehead instead of a credit card in their billfold.
Yeah.
That way there will be absolute identity, and it'll also be a report card on that person through Facebook and all those, I think, criminal-oriented organizations, social sites.
They certainly enable surveillance at a mass scale, and that's what people take for granted all the time with Facebook and all that. They don't think of the surveillance aspect of it.
Yeah, I was listening to Spotify, a particular song, and I looked at the computer and it said, George Hunt is listening to such and such a song at the time I was listening to it.
That's right. Yeah, and that's nothing. That's just the beginning.
Yeah, I did a thing on Facebook about their background and their ethics and their morals, and they don't have any. They don't have any.
Yeah.
And it's funded by the Rothschilds. The secret funds that came into Facebook and the venture capital funds, they came into Goldman Sachs from all over Europe. They weren't allowed to go into the U.S. because they'd be exposed because they'd have to identify the people that were involved in these groups that were buying Facebook stock.
Was that in the very beginning for the startup investment costs?
That's right. It was in the startup where the elite gained control of Facebook. And Mark Zuckerberg said, well, our stock is doing crazy things, but I want to make it clear that Facebook isn't trying to be a public company. We're trying to extend our reaches into the whole world. In other words, they're taking that enrichment from their IPO and they're using it to expand Facebook even more around the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I had never heard about that investment funds through Goldman Sachs and all that about Facebook. It's obviously very interesting. Now, what about...
Then it went from Facebook, it went from Goldman Sachs, then they shifted it over to J.P. Morgan Chase.
Okay, sure. As we were talking about the Milner Group earlier, J.P. Morgan, and that was a group that was always intimately connected in America to the Milner Group in Britain.
Definitely. The banker for us was Belmont and Morgan. Mm-hmm. J.P. Morgan.
Yeah. So this is an international project through and through, and it spans more than just ecological issues, more than just technology. It's everything. It's all encompassing because, again, if you have your hands on the finance that can get everything started up to begin with, you invest in what you want to be developed. So things are being selectively developed. We don't have a true free market, do we? Things are being selectively invested in on this sort of pick and choose sort of basis by this tiny elite group, correct?
Exactly. Let's take the American railroads as an example. They were funded by Kuhn Loeb, J.P. Morgan, a lot of elite, and the Indians in Buffalo were a problem to the railroads. So they enlisted the United States Army to take care of that problem, wiped out the Indians and the Buffaloes so the trains could roll smoothly to San Francisco.
And this is the same group that's parading around saying that they're in favor of saving the world, and they use ecology as their banner to get their agendas to roll forward when they're anything but caring for the environment, correct?
Yes, they're extreme liars.
Yeah.
They say one thing and they do another. It's part of their trade.
Huh.
It's almost as if Satan was in charge of their organization. I don't want to drive anyone away with those kinds of religious tendencies, but I suspect that Satan's involved.
Sure. Well, again, it's the ends justify the means, if nothing else, with them, as you were saying before. And I was wondering about the whole state of the ecological, the UN ecological push and all that. I know that there was recently the Rio Plus 20. So
yes.
The Rio conference in 92, where Agenda 21 was the outcome, this is exactly 20 years later. This just happened. Do you know anything about that and how the plans are moving along, how they connect to what happened 20 years ago?
I can't figure it out. They said it was a failure, Echo Plus 20. What was it?
Rio Plus 20.
Rio.
Yeah.
Rio Plus 20, yeah. They probably have some agenda which they attained, but maybe in the votes that were taken there that we don't hear about.
It's probably, we'll get more information as time goes along that we'll find out after the fact that, oh, well, this actually happened in there. We on the outside don't have any real good information as of yet. That's what I've gathered so far.
Yes, they deprived us of information, but they know what they're going to do before they do it, and they arrange all the finances accordingly. I got into the stock market trying to be a big boy like all the rest on television, and frankly, I didn't do very well at all. And I found out later that I was just one of these little guys on the outside that came in, lost money, and they collected the money and they took it somewhere else. Yeah. So they've kind of stripped me too.
Oh goodness! Yeah,
they do. They do it with interest rates and things. I don't quite understand it.
Yeah, the interest rate. I mean, yeah, we could go on. It's the whole idea of creating something out of nothing, getting something for nothing with the interest and all that. And back into history, there were all the bans on what's the word for it? What's the creation of interest called? I can't think of the word right now. Usury, yeah. The bans on usury. That was a big thing for all throughout history, and then that idea was scrapped in more recent history.
Yeah. That's right. And I have some Muslim friends that can't borrow money because of their religion, because interest is involved. They do not accept financing as the Western world does.
That's right. Yeah, it's still a religious belief that they hold. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And frankly, those people have held their own for over 600 years under the Ottoman Empire. And as soon as the Ottoman Empire ceased in 1917, and Egypt and all those countries got their, quote, freedom, end quote, then they are today picking, they're liable to be taken over very easily, one by one.
Yeah.
So Rothschild is taking over the Ottoman Empire, all of those Islamic states.
Yeah, very interesting. I guess I definitely want you to tell us more about your website, The Big Bad Bank, George. What can we find there? What would you like listeners to see there?
Oh boy, I have a great site. It's broke me financially, but it's worth it. And it's called thebigbadbank.com. If you can't find it, you could probably put in George Hunt Rothschild, and one of those things will take you to my site. But it's thebigbadbank.com. I created a video in 1988 about the Rothschild conference that I attended in 1987. And if your viewers will go to thebigbadbank.com, they'll see about 24, 25 videos I've created about all of this that we're talking about. The best one, I think, for the beginner would be to go to Utah, 1991. That's the one I did in Utah, in Ogden, and it carries them all the way through where I started to where I was in 1991. And then they can see things I've said about Facebook. And, I have a lot of things there. The people should see, really.
Yeah, that's great. I love how this is such a personal story with you, too, how you made your way into the meeting and things just kind of came together, I guess you could say. It's amazing how you came across all this information just by going out and attending this meeting, and things snowballed from there.
Well, see, I didn't do it. It was God that brought me to that meeting. Because he told me in 1972, when after I had become a Christian, he said to me, I wrote it down, we are going into the wilderness together, you and me. Let's see. I am going to loose you upon the ravenous beasts of the earth. Don't be afraid. I will provide. And he's done all those things, except I get afraid sometimes.
Yeah. Well, keep the faith, George. Keep the faith.
I got a message. Facebook wants to murder you.
You got a message saying that in your email or something?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Well, but in any case, see, these guys are pissed off when people find out about them. Because they have to change their plans to be more discreet, and it makes it tough for them. So our pounding at them like you are right now is our best defense right now. Because we're educating, and then when it happens, then people believe us.
Well, I just want to extend a personal thank you, George, for everything that you've done, for all the sacrifices you made, for putting out the information for free, everybody to get. Again, go to thebigbadbank.com, get all the information that George has put out there. And we're going to spread this information as best we can, just like you said, so that so people know what's going on. So they won't be deceived then, because you can't be deceived if you know what's happening then. So thank you.
I'd say that I'm not bragging, but because of my background, I probably have the greatest understanding among the common people of what's going on upstairs. Yeah. A lot of study. 1971 on. I just got wrapped up in this whole thing.
All right. Thank you very much, George, for coming on the show again. I really appreciate it. And listeners, make sure you go to thebigbadbank.com, check out George's stuff, and check out theageoftransitions.com to get this episode of the podcast. You can download the audio file, watch the video. I hope you all watch the video because we got video footage of it. And as always, I want to say, Seeker, seek on.